died. Beth, Beth dies? Is that true?
Sadly, Beth March does die. But who is this Beth March everybody is talking about in this episode of Friends? So, this Beth March is one of the characters of the American classic Little Women, written by Louisa May Alcott in the year 1868. So it was written way back in the 19th century. Little Women has been made into a lot of movies, and every few decades, some new adaptation comes out. So, the story of Beth March, like one of the four sisters of the March family, is quite intriguing because of the fact that she dies really young and she dies of a certain disease which we are going to discuss in today's video. And yeah, her death is one of the most popular literary deaths which have been presented in a beautiful manner, and it continues to make people sad, like just like Joey's reaction. A lot of people's reaction are same when they discover that Beth March dies in the novel. So yeah, without any further ado, let's talk about Beth March's death in this novel. What does it imply? Why did Louisa May Alcott kill this character, and what did it mean, and all of that. So yeah, when the little woman opens, the four sisters are trying to live without their father because their father has gone off to fight in the Civil War. So, this is the time of American Civil War, and these people are living in Concord, Massachusetts. Like it is one of the northern states. So their father is fighting from the Union Army, the side which wanted to abolish the slavery. So they were fighting the Confederate Army, which was basically of the southern states of America, and the Confederate actually wanted to retain. They didn't want to abolish the slavery. So anyway, Mr. March had gone off into this war to participate, and all these four sisters were left behind to fare for themselves with their mother, who all of them referred to as Marmee. So they were living a very different sort of a lifestyle. They were not very well to do. They were not that poor, but they were not that well to do either. So all these four sisters had their little jobs, like as governesses or teachers or helpers, and like that. They used to have some jobs here and there. But Beth was someone who was kind of very shy. She was very shy as a teenager. When the novel opens, she's about 13. Like although she was a teenager, but she was still engaged in very childish sort of activities, if you can say so. So she used to have her set of dolls. She used to look after those dolls, feed those dolls. And Beth March was also this very giving sort of character. She used to care about the poors and the poor people, and she was very generous in that way. Like the reason why she got scarlet fever, which ultimately became the cause of her death later on, was because she was trying to help this particular family known as the Hummels. So the Hummels were this German family in their neighborhood, and they had a lot of babies. So one of those babies had scarlet fever, and Beth goes on to help them and offer food. And in that process, she contracts this disease from that baby, and she gets scarlet fever. From very early on, the novel foreshadows that this character, Beth March, is not going to have any sort of a future. Even the episode that happens in the sea beach, in the castles in the air. Chapter where everybody is talking about their dreams, and Beth doesn't talk about her dream, like doesn't really show much of an ambition. She later on her deathbed refers to this particular incident, and she says these particular lines.
I was never like the rest of you, making plans about the great things I'd do. I never saw myself as anything much. Not a great writer like you. Beth, I'm not a great writer.
Apart from all this, I also want to talk about a bit about the scarlet fever. So, what was scarlet fever, and why scarlet fever is so popular in a lot of novels of that era? Like in a lot of Victorian novels, also you would see a lot of young kids dying due to scarlet fever. So, I looked into it, and I found out that scarlet fever was one of the deadliest disease in the Victorian times, and any person or any kid who contracted this highly infectious disease usually didn't survive because the antibiotics were not around at that time. They were yet to be invented. Difficult to cope with a disease like scarlet fever. Got very weak, and that is why the effect of the scarlet fever was quite permanent. Like scarlet fever usually left a lot of different effects in the patients, and ultimately they succumbed to the disease. So that's what happens to Beth. Like I think in about 5 years, in the next 5 years after she gets scarlet fever, Beth dies. I also wanted to read out this particular article to you. Like it is written by Paris Review. It reflects on the real tragedy of the death of Beth March. So it talks about how Beth's death was dealt with in a very Victorian sort of manner. Her death was beautiful and holy. It talks about how in part two of Little Women, Joe observes that there is a strange, transparent look about Beth's face, as if mortal was being slowly refined away, and the immortal was shining through the because in the part two of Little Women, the good wives, uh, Beth is suddenly like she suddenly starts appearing really sad to her family members, and her mother starts paying attention to that. And she asks Joe to look into it because she had caught Beth crying here and there, crying around Meg's babies. So she was kind of confused, like what is happening to Beth, like why such a depressive sort of episode is going on with her. So when Joe tries to find out about this, she guesses uh, that Beth is now 19. So probably all of this depressive mood is because she has fallen in love with Laurie, but it was not so, as she'll find out later on. So Joe mistakes Beth's pallor for the conventional signs of unrequited love. Only later, during a trip to the seaside, does she find out, far from a crush, Beth has accepted that she is going to die. And soon, there on the shore of her own metaphor, Beth says,
It's like the tide going out. It goes out slowly, but it can't be stopped. I'll stop it.
there are a lot of great articles written about Beth's death. So there's this one more article which I came across. It is called English God Save the Girl, Child Narratives of Juvenile Female Illness. So it talks about this particular, it talks about a lot of things, but there's this particular paragraph which I found really interesting. It talks about how during those times, like in the 19th century and like the Victorian era, although this novel is not exactly a part of the Victorian novels because it is written by an American author, although the time frame is kind of similar to the Victorian age. So, in a lot of Victorian novels and also in the 19th century novels, sickness was dealt in a very different sort of a manner. It was almost romanticized, and it was presented as if it was such a beautiful, austere, and holy thing. And if the sick person's room was almost seen as a shrine. So also in the case of Beth, like her room was almost seen as a shrine. Like it was almost as if everybody had accepted that nothing can be done. She is this person who is the martyr figure who is about to die. She is almost this angel. The room of the sick person was like a pilgrimage or a shrine where people used to pay visits, people used to sit down to listen to this sick person, sick and dying person talking about life and how heroic they were being about their death. People have always wondered like why Louisa May Alcott decided to kill off Beth March. Like what was her intention behind killing Beth March like that? So it was actually something. which reflects her actual life, because she used to have this sister known as Lizzie Alcott, and Lizzie Alcott also probably had scarlet fever or some other deadly disease. Died really young, like not as young as Beth Marsh, but still she died in her 20s. And yeah, so Louisa May Alcott had to cope with her sister's death, and so through Beth March, she is trying to recreate her own sister, Lizzie Alcott. Although I've read that Lizzie Alcott's death was not such a beautiful scene, like the way Beth March's death has been presented. Like, that was not the case with Lizzie's death, the actual sister of Louisa May Alcott. Her death was actually very loud and very not so beautiful and romantic, because Lizzie's disease made her extremely angry, because she was dealing with a lot of pain and she used to lash out at her family and shout, and her death was not easy in any way. So I think that maybe Louisa May Alcott made Beth's death seem so beautiful, because maybe she was trying to reimagine her own sister's death. So yeah, this was all that I wanted to discuss about Beth Marsh. I was really fascinated about how she dies and the way it is presented in the novel. So I've tried to explore all of that in this video as well. So like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you very, very soon. Bye.